my name is Charlie. If you haven't been here before, welcome to my channel. I haven't been here for a very, very long time. I've taken some time away to just spend time on my life, make sure I'm happy, build the home I've always wanted. I'm now engaged to be married in March, and I'm a new mum to a beautiful little 11-week-old girl. The reason I am back is because I feel you guys might like to hear what happened to me recently. I had my daughter 11 weeks ago, and it was the most perfect time in my life. It couldn't have gone any better. If you guys want to hear more about my birth story, I'm more than happy to make a video about that. Please leave a comment down below if that's something you would like to hear. Yeah, anyway, I gave birth to my daughter 11 weeks ago, and it was the most perfect time in my life. Very much standard procedure, not many complications. I spent one night in hospital and then I came home, and we spent a very, very beautiful 6 days at home learning to be mum and dad, which was very, very lovely. And the Saturday, basically the 6th day I was home, which was a Saturday, I woke up in the morning and felt extremely unwell. I was warned by my midwife that I would have flu-like symptoms because I was becoming a breastfeeding mum, and it's very likely that you start feeling a little bit fluish when your milk comes in. So I told my other half and I said, I don't feel very well, can I just sleep in this morning and he will take the babe for a couple of hours. He was absolutely fine with that. Obviously, you know, you work as a team when you're parents, and he had slept that night, I had done the night shift, and he was more than happy to let me rest. But unfortunately I did not rest for a couple of hours. I couldn't wake up. I kept sleeping through. He kept having to come back in and tell me I needed to wake up to feed the baby, because obviously being a breastfeeding mum, the father cannot do that. So he kept unfortunately having to come and wake me up to feed the baby, and as the hours went on I was increasingly getting worse. It was the Sunday morning I woke, well, I say I woke up, I was still very away with the fairies. My partner woke me up and asked how I felt. I said I wasn't feeling very well still. And on the Saturday, he had noticed I had this very small red mark on my tummy. And he thought maybe it was just because I slept funny, or maybe the baby had laid on my chest funny when I was feeding her. It could have been anything. But on this Sunday, when he woke me up to see how I felt, this rash had increased dramatically across my abdomen, and it was extremely hot to touch. And it had welted in a manner as if, you know, like you had burnt your skin. So we didn't, well, I say we didn't really know what to do. I was still very much unaware of how bad I was. And he decided to call the midwives and see if they could help. They informed me that I should go up because they just assumed that maybe I had some sort of postpartum infection. So I ended up going back up to maternity triage to be seen. Majority of this I don't really recollect, but I do remember getting into triage and they put me in a delivery suite. And that is where I stayed from the Sunday afternoon until the Monday afternoon. And from Sunday to Monday, I spent majority of my time asleep with a extremely cold towel across my head to try and keep my temperature down. I was peaking at around 38.9, I think it was, which is extremely high for a temperature. And they could not get it down. I was having blood tests, I was having swabs, I was having anything you can think of for a routine checkup. My blood pressure was not good, my temperature was not good, eye all over was not okay. They had to draw around the swelling and the rash that I was getting to see how drastic it was increasing. Unfortunately, this was increasing quite drastically by the hour. And it wasn't until Monday, around about 12 o'clock, they informed me that they were going to take me down for a CT scan. Which was fine. I really wanted them just to find what the problem was. I was really not feeling myself. I just wanted to get home, spend it with my daughter and my fiance. So they took me down for a CT scan. I struggled to have this because I really couldn't get the towel off my head. Even just the smallest bit of light towards my eyes was excruciatingly painful. So that took some time, but we got there in the end. And it was about 20 minutes after having the CT scan, a consultant came in. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name, so I'll never be able to publicly say thank you, but I do remember what he looks like, so if I do ever bump into him again, I think I'll be able to say thank you. But yeah, he came into the room and basically said that we needed to sit down. And it was very unusual because at this point it was like suddenly I felt okay. It was the severity of the situation made me completely forget, you know, that I had this severe headache, and I just kind of just sat up in the bed. And he told me that I either have cellulitis or necrotitis and fasciitis, and he was concerned that it was the most severe one, which is necrotitis and fasciitis, and if that was the case, we needed to move, and we needed to move now. And I had to sign a consent form there and then, and he turned around and told me, you either don't sign it and you die, or you sign it and there's a chance you could die. So I signed it, called my mum up. She managed to get to the hospital just before I got wheeled down to the operating theatre. This was from signing the consent form to going down to theatre was about 15 to 20 minutes tops. And I got wheeled down to theatre, and that's all I remember. The next thing I remember was on the Wednesday. So I went down to theatre on the Monday, and the next thing I remember is on the Wednesday, was when they woke me up from life support. I had breathing tube, feeding tube, you know, everything you need to keep yourself breathing is what I had. And I remember them waking me up. I remember coming through vaguely, and obviously still had the breathing tube in, the feeding tube, and them briefly telling me that, you know, they'll take the tube out in a minute. And I was just kind of laying there very unsure of what had just happened, not realising how much time had gone past. And then shortly after, obviously, I started breathing. The sedation had worn off, and obviously I started trying to get the tube out. And that's when they knew that, you know, they were able to move it. I was okay. So they removed all the breathing tube. My family were allowed in. And then that's when I got all the updates. So on the Monday, I had been wheeled down to the theatre. They had done the 2 emergency incisions in my abdomen and done a debridement surgery where basically they remove all the dead tissue within my abdomen that the bacteria was eating away. And then they kept me sedated on the Monday night. They briefly woke me on Tuesday, but not enough for me to remember or be in any, you know, form of control of my body. Yeah, apparently during this time I was able to write down things on a piece of paper because people were able to talk to me, but obviously because I had the breathing tube in, I was unable to communicate. So I was writing things down the best I could. I have no recollection of this, but we do still have the papers, so I'm able to read what I was writing. And I was still cracking jokes. I was still trying to be the happy-go-lucky self that I usually am. And I'll pop in a little photo here of the awful photo that my other half got of me. Put my thumbs up to say that I was okay. Partially awake, but obviously clearly very still sedated. And then they put me back under and took me back down on the Tuesday to have another debridement surgery. In the same incisions, they were just left open. They just went straight back into where they'd already been to make sure they had removed everything. They removed a little bit more and then sent me back up to the ICU. They woke me up on the Wednesday morning, and that's obviously when my family were allowed back in. They were able to update me, and I was able to actually finally communicate that I was okay. But this was obviously the first time that I had seen the severity of the situation, because the last I had been told to me was it's either cellulitis or necrotizing fasciitis, and obviously I was hoping it was only cellulitis, because if that was the case, it would have been just a case of sewing me back up and giving me some antibiotics. But unfortunately that wasn't the case. I then had to come to terms of having 2 extremely large open wounds on my stomach, which I will insert here. Before I do insert them, I will give a huge trigger warning. These are graphic and obviously of the medical nature, so if that is something that you are not a fan of, or you know, it does make you feel a bit queasy, then please look away now, because they are extremely graphic. But yeah, I'll pop them in now. This was the one in the centre of my abdomen, which was the smallest of the 2. Didn't go very deep. Deep, obviously, in a manner of speaking of normal wounds, but compared to the 2, this was the less deep one. And then this one was the one on my left side, which was where the infection had started, and this had been taken straight down to my muscle lining, unfortunately, and they had gone into the wound and underneath. So as much as the wound is big looking already, there was actually more damage under from where you could not see. So these were left open for 6 days. I was just temporarily dressed. They were temporarily sewn together just to make sure that they did not need to go back in to do another debridement, to make sure I did not get any more forms of infection. They were keeping an eye on if the rash was going to come back or if I was going to get any more fever-like symptoms, and thankfully I didn't. So I spent 6 days in ICU, and then I was moved to another ward where I finally had a vac dressing fitted to my abdomen. So I had a vac dressing on each wound. Again, trigger warning, I will insert what the vac dressing looked like here, and this is what helped me heal. So I had the vac dressing on the centre wound for around 4 days. This was then removed, and they were able to sew the wound up completely, which I was pre-warned that that would not happen. The one on my left side I had on for about 2 to 3 weeks, and this was partially sewn up, and then the remainder was left to heal on its own because it was just too damaged to try and pull it together. This was hard to deal with. The pain that comes with it, the mental trauma that comes with it is hard. I'm going to insert some photos of my journey here whilst I carry on talking. In the 2 weeks that I was in hospital, I was unable to get out of bed and like walk around. I was unable to hold my daughter. It was very much a bedbound situation, and I needed assistance to move. So once I had the vac dressings fitted, I was then required to have some brief physiotherapy intervention, which is, obviously you'll see the video of me walking down the hallway. Thankfully, in this 2 weeks of not being able to move and being bedridden, I did not lose much of my movement, my muscle mass. I was very quick to be able to get out of the bed and moving again. I was extremely weak, but thankfully I think my willpower to go home was able to keep me going of, you know, I need to move, I need to keep walking, I need to walk up the stairs, because as soon as I do that, I can go home. So thankfully this was only a couple of days. Unfortunately, my hospital stay was lengthened by a couple of days due to when they fit the vac dressing, they put me on another antibiotic called clindamycin. I was on about 4 antibiotics at the time, but they changed me over to one called clindamycin, and I had a huge reaction to that head-to-toe rash all over my body, and they were concerned that this was the necrotizing fasciitis coming back briefly. So that was very much, you know, observations, tests, making sure that it was just a reaction and not the infection. And thankfully it was just a reaction to the antibiotics, so I was swiftly taken off that and just put on another form of antibiotics. I ended up going home on Friday the 12th of May and took an extra 2, maybe 3 weeks with the vac dressings before I was off any monitors, any form of equipment. And then once the vac dressings were taken off, my centre wound has healed at this point, and my left side is the one that obviously is so humongous that it has taken a while. And the vac dressings were removed and dressings were placed over the left abdomen wound, and this was monitored every few days. I had to keep going back up to the hospital to get this redressed, and then due to the how the wound was and with the vac dressings, I had a lot of fluid build up within the wound, and so obviously this was weeping a lot, so this ended up needing to be packed and then dressed. So again, obviously that was elongated. I had to keep going up to the hospital to have this unpacked, repacked and redressed, and then it was maybe about another week or 2 before I was able to have the packing removed and it just be dressed. As of today, which is the 11th of July 2023, I am almost fully healed. And when I say by fully healed, I mean the wounds are no longer open. Unfortunately, I am still extremely weak in my abdomen. I still suffer with a lot of pain, and I have no feeling on the surface of my abdomen. My left side abdomen wound is still healing. It is closed, but still delicate. I guess that's the best way to explain it. The monitoring still needs to be there. The making sure there's no infections going to get in is still needing to be there. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks that will be finished. You know, it will just be a case of scar therapy and making sure that I myself am okay. The past 11 weeks for me and my family has been crazy, and it has put a huge perspective on life for me, and just to be grateful to be here. It was close. It was very close. But I'm now home. Obviously, you can see from my background, I'm in the nursery. I'm home. I'm watching my daughter grow. I'm planning my wedding. And yeah, it's been crazy. But I'm grateful to be here. I am still yet to be discharged from the hospital in general for the whole situation, as obviously the recovery is still ongoing. I unfortunately will never know how I contracted this deadly bacteria. I was told that it is caught via a break in the skin, whether that be a wound, a bug bite, an injection, whereas I had never had any of that within my wound. I'd had a natural delivery, so there was no C-section scar. I hadn't had any injections. I hadn't cut myself. So I will never fully understand how I contracted this or why, but that doesn't matter. I'm here and that is all that is important. So my advice to everyone out there, if you get any form of flu-like symptom and a redness on your skin that is of a rash or welt, don't go running to the hospital. Monitor it for an hour or 2. Draw a line around that rash. Monitor. Keep an eye. Write down if you need to. Have somebody with you. If that rash goes out of that line within that 2 hours, maybe 3, when you are monitoring, call the hospital. Go up to the hospital. It is always better to be safe than sorry. If it was not for my partner, I would not be here. He made that call. He was the one that said I did not look well. I was more than willing to just try and sleep it off. I've never had any big major health scares in my life, and I was always under that impression of no, you know, it wouldn't never happen to me. And it did. And if it was not for my partner, like I said, I would not be here. I've already been told by many surgeons, consultants, nurses, anyone who I've had the honour to bump into during my hospital stay, have already been told how much of a miracle this situation is. So, like I said to you guys, flu-like symptoms, a rash, they come together. Monitor, mark that rash, mark your temperature, monitor for a couple of hours. If it does not get better and that rash does increase drastically, go to the hospital. It may be the silliest thing on the planet, but there is always a small chance that it is necrotizing fasciitis. So look after yourselves, appreciate everything you have, and just enjoy life, because that's what I'm doing now.